Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 4 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. Before we start that, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. Alright, on to the stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Taswegian63. Hand over all my tasks so you can get rid of me? Okay. Not sure if this is exactly malicious compliance, but here goes. A few years back, I was the IT contracts and supplier manager at a large company. Been there 25 plus years and had a lot of corporate knowledge, having worked in multiple roles over that time. Also was very well paid due to length of tenure and experience at the company. New butthole boss gets hired and proceeds to get rid of people he doesn't like, and hires his buddies into various roles. The workplace culture took a nosedive pretty quickly. I knew my time was limited as I wasn't in his inner circle. Seeing the writing on the wall, I started looking for and applying for other roles. The butthole boss gets me in their sights and decides to get rid of me, looking to move one of his recently hired buddies to my specialized role. He doesn't even understand what I do, needing a lot of technical knowledge combined with contract and legal. He tells me he wants to move me onto an upcoming project and to finish off what I'm currently working on, and not take on any new work. Through all my contracts across the company, I knew there was no project or even significant budget for one, but I'll do what I'm told. I wrap up my work and tell him I'm ready for the project. He says, sit tight, it's not far away, and don't start anything else. So I sit at my desk, applying for other jobs and waiting. One of the jobs I applied for comes through, and I get an offer on a Friday morning. That same afternoon, the butthole boss comes around and says, the project isn't happening, and as you have nothing else on your plate, we will have to let you go. Yahtzee! I knew there is heaps of work backed up, and the crap is going to hit the fan soon when contracts aren't renewed, services cancelled, etc. I also know my employment contract, and they will have to pay a generous redundancy because the boss told HR my role isn't required anymore. I say, okay, I guess you will have to pay me a redundancy too. Sure, he says, not knowing what he has agreed to. So I go through the redundancy process and at the same time accept the offer of the new job. Come my last day, I happily accept the $200,000 payout. His face goes pale when he hears of the amount because it comes out of the team's budget. Walk out the door and into the new job the day after. Love my new job, less stress, great culture, a great team. Wish I'd left earlier, but then I wouldn't have gotten the payout if I resigned. 4 weeks later, I hear the crap is hitting the fan and they advertise for a new person for my old role as no one knows what to do. Because apparently my job was easy. He didn't even ask me to document what I did to hand over to anyone else. OP added some more context here down in the comment section. It says, some more context for the story. About 10 years ago, I was delivery manager in the IT group and a new CIO came into the company. He spent about 2 months just watching how things worked, who did what, etc. A very perceptive fellow. After this time, he called me into his office and said, you've got your team humming along, but our contract and procurement processes are stuffed. You know what is going on being one of the longest serving employees. I want you to set up our vendor management office. So I spent 6 months setting up all the processes, establishing relationships, and getting $20 million per annum portfolio under control. Contract registers, management processes, risk management, the lot. The CIO moved on after about 4 years, and I kept on in the role until the butthole boss turned up. Because everything was running smoothly, he thought the job must be easy. Let's take a quick look at the contrast between the butthole boss and the CIO. The CIO comes in and spends months watching everything that's going on and seeing how things are done, getting the right people into the right places to run the right teams and get things done. Butthole boss comes in, thinks they know exactly what's going on, that job is easy and my dumb butt friend can do it. Yep, that's definitely a contrast right there. This story comes to us from Comprehensive Ice 406. Boss says to look pretty. This isn't my story, but my friend's. My friend worked at a jewelry store, and the attire was a business suit. She loves her job because she is surrounded every day by precious metals and stones. She's a nerd for Victorian fashion, or whatever esques there is regarding fashion, balls, princesses, and royalty of Europe. Anyways, the only thing she hates in that job was the manager, Susie. From the account of my friend, Susie has an attitude similar to the fairy godmother from Shrek. Very kind in front of customers, but would then bare her teeth when they left. Her favorite pastime was to chat with the customer while criticizing the employees with remarks about their looks, appearance, or how what accessories they wore didn't match their complexion and such. And she seems to have a grudge for my friend. Probably because she engages with the customer with minor trivia like, did you know jade has a hidden meaning, and such, and it made a lot of people return to the store. One day, Susie came in extremely pissed and started off on my friend about how she looks, mind that she dresses as plainly as possible because she geeks out when it comes to anything fashion related to the 14th century, and that she has to look like what the customer wants to look like. I imagine that a light bulb went off on her head and blood rushing to her face as she thought things she could wear and whatnot. So for the entire week, which crosses Valentine's Day, she dressed up in gowns and dresses matched with accessories that made her look like a Barbie princess. The entire time, there were people coming up to her about the dress, the accessories, and the theme, to which she explained with delight. Susie was steaming the entire time. She tried to get her fired, but the owner was present because of the upcoming holiday and was happy with the increase in sales then. I managed to sneak by and saw her in a white dress that screamed Frozen if it had an Eastern vibe to it, and Susie glaring from the back. I heard she left after the week was over without notice and someone else was promoted. My friend wasn't too bothered because the current manager had seniority and was pretty chill, so she's happy. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Spin81. It says, the dumbest thing about this is Susie, a manager, getting mad because someone generates repeat business to their store while doing absolutely nothing wrong. Another commenter called Kiwi Kitten NZ said, what a brilliant way to boost sales around an important date in the jewelry business while maliciously complying with her manager's request. I can see why the owner was happy with this result. Her dressing up because her manager wanted her to look pretty boosted foot traffic into the store, which boosted sales, much to the manager's chagrin. I'm not really sure how malicious this compliance was, but it brought people into the store, so I hope that OP does this in the future. I also hope that the store has some kind of bonus structure so OP can get compensated for bringing all these people in. But I highly doubt it, considering what they said the management sounds like. This story comes to us from Timothy Jor. Malicious compliance through army commands and ensuing chaos and hunger. This is a story from my time in my country's army, Greece. This could also easily be in the petty revenge thread. After I joined the army for my mandatory 9-month service, I was forcibly given the specialty of the cook. After some surprisingly harsh training, they sent me to an outpost where I had to do 2 daily services, one as a cook and one as an area observer, while everyone else did 1-0 services, for about 50 days non-stop. That meant I was on my feet from 6 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. every single day, while getting 3.5 hours sleep every night. Nobody helped me in any way. I did not have nearly enough time to prepare the food properly. They claimed it was not protocol to help the cook, and nobody cared. So naturally, I got extremely tired and pissed off. One day, I dared to protest my situation, and also report some problems with the kitchen, lack of supplies, and the oven itself, and was told to shut up, stop complaining, and do my job. So I decided to comply with the shut up and don't complain policy. What they didn't know was that I had found a trick to turn the oven on. It looked fine, but the food wouldn't cook at all. The next day, I was going to prepare a stuffed vegetable dish for 12 people, tomatoes and peppers stuffed with rice and minced meat. I put it in the oven and waited 4 hours to not be cooked. I casually served the raw food, which had become mushy and rancid because it was summertime. The look on everyone's face when they tried to eat the first bite was absolutely priceless. They immediately snapped and started freaking out, yelling and screaming in anger like this was a common thing, even though I had never failed a dish before. And those arrogant, selfish pricks ate like kings every day. I maliciously smiled and told them that I lacked half of my supplies and the recipe was wildly incomplete while the oven was malfunctioning. Word reached the captain, who also freaked out, but I told him that it was he who commanded me to shut up about the food problems. He said my failure should be reported, and I agreed. I immediately called my unit and reported that I was being mistreated, overworked, sleepless, and ignored for 43 consecutive days. So this resulted to my failure. The next day, I heard the captain was reprimanded severely by our colonel commander for the crappy situation in his outpost. Of course, the next 3 days I did the exact same thing, and I starved the bastards to insanity. Afterwards, they were begging me to help out with the food preparations, but I refused since I complied with "it's not protocol to help the cook" policy, which they claimed in the first place, and kept feeding them disgusting, tasteless food under the excuse of a broken oven. They called the unit and cried that I'm holding them hostage with the food and I should be removed. The day I was removed 1 week later was the best day of my life. I haven't regretted anything and 100% would do it again. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Teapots at 10 Paces. It says, "Never ever F with the cook. Why do people like learning this lesson the hard way?" Another commenter down below called Shroomy Smurf said, "Good on you. One would think that after the first meal, things would have been fixed. Oh well, sucks for them." OP responded to this one and said, "Sadly, it didn't because they didn't give a crap about me or my hard work. Everyone else had an 8-hour service day for 2-hour shifts, and I had continuous 21-hour shifts every day for 50 days. They didn't learn the first time because they're used to me getting effed constantly, and even made jokes about it. You should see them on the third day. It was glorious. They were so angry and frustrated, some of them nearly cried, and their faces were pale. Oof, it's been 10 years and still feel great about it." The list of people that you really shouldn't mess with is getting longer and longer. We don't mess with IT, we don't mess with cooks, we don't mess with medics, and what do you guys think? Anybody else you could add to that list? Make sure you put it in the comment section down below. And if you're listening on the podcast, well, go over to YouTube and comment down below. This story comes to us from Worldly Leg 74. Usernames must follow district education policies. At my first job decades ago as the junior employee on the IT staff for a school, I was in charge of setting up email addresses for new teachers. The district had Microsoft Exchange for email, and the education policy was that all teacher email addresses would follow the same format, first initial, then last name, unless we had another teacher of the same name, which never happened because we only had 400 teachers in the district. However, we did have a new teacher, Greg Roper, who I decided to just set up simply as Roper G. Once all the new usernames were set up, my boss, our bureaucratic assistant principal, reviewed them all and sent me a short note telling me to fix Greg's username to comply with the school's standard format. Well, I didn't see the note until my next workday, and by that time, principal's assistant had left for a vacation to Hawaii. Facing a deadline to publish all the emails for the school's website and back to school email, I went ahead and followed orders. Username changed to Groper. Email set to groper@washingtonunified.org. Pushed to production. And everything was quiet for about a week. But then students began to receive their welcome emails directing them to contact their teachers using the newly assigned email addresses. Next thing I knew, I got an urgent, slightly flustered call from the principal himself. I printed off that email directive from the assistant principal and went up to the principal's office, where I found both of them sitting side by side. Apparently, several concerned parents had already contacted the school, questioning the appropriateness of the teacher's email address. The assistant principal, still tan from his vacation, started to low-key chastise me for not catching this sooner. Well, his sunburned face turned even redder from embarrassment when I plopped down the email thread from a week earlier, where he explicitly asked me to make Greg's email comply with the school policy. The principal's expression was priceless. The assistant principal left with his tail between his legs, and I had a new email, Roper G, created for the teacher that afternoon. Greg was so grateful that he actually took me to lunch, joking that it was the least he could do after the crazy ordeal. Quick edit at the bottom, OP wanted to note that the school name has been changed, so that email address that I read above doesn't go anywhere. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Grumpy Cat Stevens. It says, "My own company had to make an exception to our email username convention for a fellow by the last name of Watts, because his first name began with a T. They decided to include his middle initial." The whole comment section on this story is a goldmine of crazy usernames that people have seen in the past. But the one that takes the cake out of all of them, Megan Finger, because her email address was her last name Finger and the first two letters of her first name. Did you know that every single KCC video is also produced in podcast form? You can search for Karma Comment Chameleon on every major podcasting platform. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.